Today we're going to talk about how to foundation paper piece and only use one paper template. We're also going to talk about sewing curved seams. The fabrics that you see in the video are not the fabrics that go with the pattern. That's because I don't have my fabrics yet and I'm testing this pattern, so I'm using fabrics that I have, which are from the Origins collection from P&B. So let's get on with it. Here is a photo of the single paper arc template that I used when I tested this pattern. I used it for every single block, and it looks a little worn and it looks a little dirty because of the glue that I used, but I just wanted to show you it is possible. So here we go. So I've printed out the block that we're going to make, and this is the Origins fabric that I was telling you about. So the arc templates, there's A and B. It's actually the identical same template, and I used it for both A and B. Here you can see I've laid out my fabrics in the order. The order on the A arc and the B arc are different, so I sewed all my A arcs first, and here's how I do it. I have this nifty little 1/4 inch ruler because I'm going to trim so that I have a 1/4 inch seam allowance every time I add a block. And I also have my little glue stick there and my rotary cutter. So the first thing that we do is fold the template in both directions, every one of those lines. And then I add a little dab of glue, and this is a fabric glue. To start, you can pin, but I don't like pinning just because I think it takes longer, and it also, I get poked. All right, so here we pick it up, and then you can either trim or you can line up the first two pieces so that it's about a 1/4 inch. But I'm trimming here, and you can see I need a new blade, which I did change. Then you pick it up carefully and you put it down, and you're going to sew right next to the paper, not through the paper. If you sew through the paper, you will not be able to use the template for the whole time. So stitch right through the paper. I mean, stitch right next to the paper. Ooh, I need more coffee. Or maybe not. Maybe I've had too much. And then I finger press open. I'm actually pressing here, but it's not really necessary, I found, as I got going. Fold back the paper template and trim the 1/4 inch. Then you grab the next fabric in line, right sides together, flip it over so you can see the paper, and stitch next to the line, next to the paper fold line. Open it up, finger press again. Fold back the template, trim. And this is how we go all the way to the end. So I'm going to speed this up just a wee bit. So I'm slowing it back down because I wanted to show you one of the things that happened to me a number of times when I was sewing this, and that is that I didn't make sure that it was flat, and it folded over on me, and so I had to pick out a couple of stitches and re-sew it. I really think if I wasn't watching Northern Exposure while I was doing this, I either listen to books on tape or sometimes watch things on my iPad when I'm sewing. So if I hadn't been doing that, I probably would have caught this. But when you have a lot of these to make, you can sometimes multitask. At least that's what I like to do. Okay, so that is the final square. And now I am taking it to the iron and giving it a good press because I want it to be super flat when I trim it. Now, this is the very first one that I'm doing in the test, and I pin it. And after I did a number of them, I used less and less pins, and pretty soon I wasn't pinning it at all. I found that I could hold the paper flat with my hand and it would stay put while I trimmed. So that is how I did the majority of them, but it'll be up to you to decide if you want to pin or not pin. And you can also use the scissors instead of a rotary cutter. So many choices. And that right there is probably another reason I stopped using pins, because I poked myself. That's never fun. Okay, next we're going to sew arc A, which we just finished piecing, to the template piece 1. And to find the center, I just fold the arc in half, and I also fold the template piece 1 in half, and then you just have the 2 creases that you line up. Simple enough, right? It looks like it's not going to come out because they don't line up at the ends, but just watch and see the magic of the curved seam. So I flip it over and I pin in the center. And then I go all the way to the end, and I line the end up, and pin that. And then I just use my fingers to put the 2 edges together. This is a fairly gentle curve, so it actually goes together pretty well. I really did not have to pick out a single fold that sometimes if you're doing a curve, you'll get a fold or a pleat when you're sewing that, and I did not get a single one in this whole quilt. So that doesn't mean I'm a great sewer. That just means that the curve is a gentle curve. And if you just stitch carefully, slowly, you won't have any. You won't have any in yours either. So you can see I'm pinning pretty extensively here. This again is the first time that I'm sewing this, and so I'm expecting more problems than I actually had. I'm going to speed this up a little. So here it's all pinned, and I am going to stitch that first curved seam. I'm going very slowly. I'm removing the pins before I get to them. You notice I don't have to stop. That's because I'm going slow and because it's going pretty smoothly. So and that was a pretty dang good feeling because it worked. And they match at the ends. So now I'm going to press, and I'm pressing toward the center, toward the football, the marquee. So now we're going to jump ahead to arc B, and with arc B, before you sew it to the block unit, you add these squares to each end, and it's pretty straightforward. Now we're going to add arc B just like we added arc A. Fold it in half and fold the arc B in half and do the exact same thing we did with the other side. It's just 2 little squares longer. So you may notice something a little different. I've sewn a lot of these with arc A, and now that I'm doing arc B and I've sewn a lot of them, I'm only putting in 3 pins, 1 in the center and 1 on each end. And then basically I use my fingers to hold that curve in place instead of using pins. And it works. It works. You're just going to have to decide for yourself whether you want to pin everything. It's a time saver if you don't pin. However, if you have to rip out stitches, it's not a time saver. So once again, you'll have to decide what you're comfortable with and how you're going to do it. This is the first time I'm doing it this way, so I'm a little awkward, and as I did it more and more and more, it just kept getting better. So I'm sure you will have this similar experience whether you decide to pin or not pin. The more of these you do, the more, well, what's the word? Well, you get confident and you you just gain skill. I have no words. I think it's time for a break. And last of all, I'm going to show you how to sew the curved corner blocks. Essentially, it's the same. Fold them both in half to find the center and pin. I've speeded this up just a little bit for you, and you can see I'm using quite a few pins. Once again, this is the first time I'm actually sewing this block. So I'm pinning the ends and then pinning the center. And I think this is a fairly typical way of doing these. I don't think I've invented anything. And then for the stitching, and again, this is a little bit faster than what I'm actually doing it. But you can see it's going fairly well. I don't have to stop. I can pretty much... There, I did stop. Speak of the devil, right? So if I hadn't stopped there and smoothed, I would have gotten a fold or a little dart. And there it is. And there it is pressed. And now you're going to see me get really crazy here. I'm not pinning it. I'm not pinning it at all. And this is just like, I just want to see what will happen. I may have to tear the whole thing out, but I know how much they overlap the seam at the start and the finish. So I am just, you know, I'm just being this rebel, daring quilter. Renegade, maybe that's it. Renegade quilter, no pinning. Let's just see how this turns out. Wild times in the studio. The anticipation, right? Doesn't look too bad. There it is pressed. So it was, I'm pointing to the seam because they lined up perfectly even though I didn't pin them and even though I didn't try to line them up. So that was kind of a fun surprise. So I hope this video was helpful, and I appreciate you watching and listening to my babble and purchasing my pattern. So thank you, and I will see you in the next video.